I'm doing pretty good. Been busy, but good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I can go closer. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Just for Darren's sake, because he's the one who has to edit the podcast.
Oh, he does?
Yes.
Okay. Let's make it harder for him.
Right, exactly. That's my thought right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, you doing okay today?
Doing okay. Just got done with a funeral, and yeah.
Hence the collar, right?
Hence, yep. That's why I'm wearing this. So you all know that I am a pastor. So,
Yes.
yep,
'Cause
gotta look
otherwise,
official.
You might sneak through the lines as, who is this random person?
Yep.
Yeah.
I find that happens. So, you know.
And you've earned it, so I'm glad that you're wearing the collar today.
Yes, my years of education.
Exactly. So let's kind of, can you give me an overview of what you preached on? Well, it would have been yesterday, but I know that this is going to be aired later on in, I don't know, some place. Anyways.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Ten Commandments, right?
Yeah, so the big concept, I think, for the weekend was the reveal. How is God's love being revealed to people? How is Christ being revealed in the Transfiguration story? I touched on that in a little bit. I got a little bit more to go deeper on that today. But it focuses primarily on the Ten Commandments and that gift that God has given us in those laws. And so I started breaking down some of that because I know for me, I wouldn't say that I grew up in a household or even really a sort of like faith-based life that like beat these laws over your head, like you need to do this.
Right.
But I do remember like there were some things that were because of these laws. So like taking the Lord's name in vain. It was always like, you can never say God, right? So like my cousins would be like, oh my God. And we would have to say gosh or goodness because saying God was taking the Lord's name in vain. Well, that's not actually what that means, right? And so it was just like little things in those sense that the laws affected my life. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in seminary, it took me that long. But I was an Old Testament concentration, and I primarily just studied Hebrew, so I took a lot of language courses in translating. And this was just in the beginner, like Hebrew class. We were translating the Ten Commandments, and I remember my professor, it was Mark Thronveit, and he said that these commandments are like, you have to do this or something's going to happen to you. It was like, you should do this. You want to do this if you want to live in my kingdom. And so it was more of a, I've done this for you, therefore you should follow my commandments, follow this law, follow this, right? It's going to benefit you. It's going to make your life better. It's going to make the world better. And I remember on my notes, I was like, these are not laws. Like I was so taken back. I was like, what? This is so revolutionary. How come we aren't telling people this? This is so amazing. And so for me, I mean, I didn't come across that in my sermon, but it was really this like eye-opening experience that oftentimes in the Bible translations that we read, the Hebrew means so much more and shows us a lot more, and so we miss a lot of that. Yeah. So like our translations, right? It doesn't come off that. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily like optional, but they're not given as a way to condemn us when we fail to do them. It's to show us what the kingdom of God looks like. Yeah. And give us a model for how we should be living with God and with each other. And so I think that is a lot more freeing, right, than being a kid that can't say, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that.
Or, I mean, even more than that. I mean, it was really, at least for me in my growing up, it was used as, it's kind of control, right? It's about keeping control, keeping disciplined, and that really, you have to keep these laws in order to even get to what we consider to be eternity, right? And then that's a whole nother ball of wax that you could totally get into, that it's like, what is God's kingdom? And is it here on earth, or is it just this nebulous place in eternity, or maybe both?
Yeah.
But it was more about, this is your sort of way to, rather than, from what I heard you preach about, it's more about, how do you relate to your neighbor? And I thought that was really impactful when I heard it myself, because I have not heard the Ten Commandments in that sort of light. But it also makes sense the way that you kind of described it.
Yeah, I mean, and I was also a social work major in college, and so I would also see a lot of child abuse, working with like child protective services and things like that. And I know, like, one of my questions was, well, it says to honor your father and mother. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? When kids are being treated terrible by their parents, are they still supposed to be honoring them? And I was told that I'm taking it so literally. And that sometimes in our world, parents don't deserve that when they don't honor the office of parent that they've been given. And again, it was just like another thing of like, right? Like, these are laws to tell us and show us what it looks like to live in the kingdom. And when you live in the kingdom of God, you don't have bad parents. You don't have bad children in that sense. You have people who are caring for one another. So you don't have to worry about anybody abusing anybody, because they're honoring those spaces and those offices that have been given to them by God. So I mean, it was just a lot of all of those things opening up. And then, I talked about the Sabbath because I always find it so funny that it's like we consider Sunday our Sabbath day, but then when you go to church, there's so many people who are working on Sunday because that's their job, right, is to bring the Sabbath, that worship for other people, which it's not a bad thing. It's what we, sign up to do when we chose this profession in life. But, I think the Sabbath it's not generally just that one day.
Right.
It's so much more. And so, like, I learned more about the Sabbath when I was taking a class on like environmental things in faith.
Okay.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And we looked at a lot of the laws, like the Leviticus laws and things like that. And it just opens up so much of like how we don't follow what God plans for us and how God did these things to really ensure that we were given life and have it abundantly. And that for everybody, right? Like every 7 years, your slaves go free. They go home and they take all of that money that like they had, and they're supposed to also be given like food and all this stuff to take home and to care for their families.
Right.
And then they don't have to come back, right? Like they're just set. And so there's so many things that God does as gifts that people have just gone away from in so many aspects, or again, either taking them too literally of just that one day, is like the only thing that matters when it comes to Sabbath. Yeah.
And I feel like there are directions into how you can live in a healthy community, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about one person hoarding everything. It's about giving out to your neighbors when you have stuff to give, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's...
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I read something where I forget what CEO it was, but it was if you took their salary from 1 year, how they could eliminate everybody in the United States from being hungry for years.
Right.
Right. And it was it would only dent their total income, a very small percentage. They would barely even notice that this money was gone, essentially.
Right.
And that, that's a part in my sermon where the Sabbath is that you give whatever land you have bought or taken from somebody and you give it back to them. You give it back to that family, give it to their home. And it's so that you don't have those large CEOs of corporations and different things who control and dominate all of these other spaces because they have so much money.
Right.
And so it's still something that, all of this stuff is very relevant to what we're dealing with today.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yep.
It's totally relevant. I mean, it's the capital, right? It's capitalism does not align with the kingdom of God. It's pretty much polar opposite, it feels like. And
well, yeah, I mean, in capitalism, that's something that was around back then, right? It was around during Jesus' time and trying to, teach people on how you should spend your money and do all those different things.
Right.
But it's crazy, right? Of how we get these ideas of people coming forward with being the at face value Christians, but aren't actually doing what they're called to do by Christ.
Yep.
So,
man, if we could solve that, the world would be a much better place, right?
It truly would, yeah. Yep.
I mean, isn't that the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we're supposed to be here to make the world a better place.
Yep. Yeah. Definitely is. So, but then this whole reveal, right, of what the Ten Commandments are revealing to us, what they are revealing for their lives back then, goes hand in hand with the reveal of the transfiguration of Jesus.
Yeah.
At the top of the mountain with a few of his disciples. And so that, right, so I took bits and pieces of that, of how, we get the idea of the Ten Commandments that before that, God states who God is, right? I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. And so therefore you should do these things because I've done this great thing to you, right? And this will ensure that these other things aren't going to happen. And that's sort of how I took the transfiguration story of, Jesus is transfigured and the disciples are like, we should build tents and we'll stay here forever. This is where we live now. And then God appears through this cloud, the voice of God. And, it says, this is my son, the chosen, and listen to him. And I kind of paired those together because God coming through this cloud, this dark cloud with his voice of, this is my son, listen to him, is the same thing that God is doing when it comes to giving the commandments of I am the Lord your God, right? Therefore, so listen to me. And the same thing is with Jesus too, right? People aren't listening to him. They're seeing him as a certain identity as their teacher, healer, and prophet. Jesus tells them who he is, right? He walks on water, saying that he's the Son of God, but they can't imagine even what that means, even when he walks on water, of what the title of Son of God means. And so he takes him to the mountain to be transfigured before them, to give them that true meaning of all of it. And it's this big mystery, right? And it reveals Jesus' identity in a way that we haven't fully seen before. And it connects Elijah and Moses to him. Because again, those are prophets. Those are people that God reveals God's self to. And so Jesus is in those the same realm as them. And so it becomes, when he's, lifted up and turns dazzling white, it puts him in the realm of who he's been telling him he is all along.
Mm-hmm.
And so then God, again, says you need to listen to him.
Right.
Because of, what he has done, because I am the Lord your God. And so it's such a different type of reveal, I think, when it comes to who God is and who Jesus is in God, that it's hard for us to wrap our minds around, and we take it, I want to say, literally in the point, like the Ten Commandments, where we miss why it's given to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's to reveal what's at the heart of God, what's at the heart of Christ. It's to reveal what God's, hopes and dreams and plans are for us. It's to reveal what the kingdom looks like in our midst. That happens within this gift of the commandments, and then the revealing in the transfiguration story as well.
Was that, maybe ignore my ignorance, but were they at the same mountain or not? Or do we not know?
I think so.
Okay. That's kind of what, for
I'll
some
see if
reason,
I wrote it down.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, I feel like I've heard this before.
I think they are.
That it's actually.
Of course, I don't write it, but yeah, I'm pretty sure they are.
And that's obviously a minorly important thing, right? Because it's mimicking both. It's not, and it's happening in the same location as where the Ten Commandments were given.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, I threw you off track.
No, you're totally fine. But then, the disciples, when they hear God's voice, so they collapse in terror of this voice, which, again, I think shows how powerful God is. But it's not an angry, vengeful God, which is what we talked a little bit about in the sermon, certainly from, Keenan's upbringing, right?
Yeah.
And certainly even yours,
mm-hmm.
that angry God who is going to get mad at you if you don't do this. But it's more of this fear, this magnitude of how big God is.
Right.
That causes us to have that fear. But the fear is really more of being in awe and amazement of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for any of us, right, if you were to hear the voice of God, weren't expecting it, you would definitely be thrown off track. But then, God comes to us in love, to help us in the circumstance, right? And just says,
yeah,
you need to just listen to him and
right.
what he tells you.
Right.
So, yeah.
So is that all you have on the Transfiguration, or is there more to dive into with the Transfiguration?
Oh, I can always do more. So, yeah, so I think this goes with a lot of things of mountaintop experiences.
Okay.
So I didn't really get into that, right? So 10 Commandments are given on a mountain. The Transfiguration happens on a mountain. A lot of important things happen on mountains.
Yeah.
In the Bible. And so, how that's paired with the idea of mountaintop experiences that don't always translate into our normal daily life. Right? So, you have kids who, they're physically going on trips where they're hiking up on mountains, faith-based trips, or going to Camp Wapo like they do here. Oftentimes, kids will come back on a high, a faith high.
Yeah.
They're super fired up about Jesus, church, camp, anything. The friends that they met there. And then they come back here, and it's a little different, and like they're still fired up, and then it slowly fades.
Yeah.
And then they're back into their normal lives. And so I think when it comes to these experiences, it's more about how are we coming back from them, that we do live as a changed people. That I think are very important, right? So we get the few disciples who want to make tents up at the top, and Jesus is just like, we can't stay here. Like, this is going to keep us from living into what God wants.
I mean, to kind of defend them, right? They as the disciples are a part of a culture where you have the temple, you have those types of things. So things were location based. So that would make sense. Hey, let's just hang out here. This is amazing, this thing that has happened. So let's just stay here and bask in it. But yes, it's hard to go away from the mountaintop and still continue to hold on to those teachings and learnings and whatnot.
Yep. Yeah. So like, what I equate this with, the Ten Commandments or even the Transfiguration was one of the first trips I ever led, youth trip, was when I was working at Central Lutheran in downtown Minneapolis. And I had a youth group of all boys. And so I had like a male leader and we went to Colorado. And we went to Rainbow Trail Lutheran Camp, and we did a hiking camp in the mountains. So we also, like, we had to pack our own packs, and we had to decide, what was worth bringing, because it all adds weight.
Right. Yeah.
And I had made these, what I called them, faith talk cards, where it wasn't just faith questions. It would be like, what's your favorite TV show? Or what's your favorite musical artist? And then it would just be like, tell us about a baptism you remember. Like, it would sneak in all these faith things. And the youth hated the cards so much, right? Because they were like, oh, they're just so stupid. And so they were like, don't bring those cards on this hike. And I mean, they're thick, right? So they're a little heavy. So I secretly packed them, and we went off on the trail. And, it was good. We hiked for a day, camped, and then hiked until we got to, like, the main place that we were going to camp at. And one night we were sitting all around the fire, and devotion had kind of ended, and they didn't really know what to talk about. And so they were like, oh, did you bring those cards? And I was like, the cards you told me not to bring? And I was like, yes, I did. So I ran back to my tent and I got them. And it started opening up more questions. And where we got to know each other in just very different ways. And then, we go to bed, and there's a huge thunderstorm. And when you're up in the mountains, you're not super covered necessarily from the elements. So lightning is so much brighter that high up. And then when it thunders, like, the ground shakes and you feel it.
Yeah.
And so, the next morning we all wake up and everybody's talking about, like, how, like, you could really hear the thunder, but you could really feel it, right? And so, like, everything was shaking. And so we're all talking about this, and we don't want to go home and stuff like that, but we all smelled and needed a shower. And so then we get back, and there was a difference in our relationship from going out there, that from that experience, we can't take that experience home.
No.
And we can't obviously, like, be living in that all the time. But what it transformed us was into a solid youth group.
Okay.
Where, I had only known these boys for, like, 8 months. And, like, now we were solid. So we could go into the next year knowing that I had a group of boys that, like, we trusted each other. Like, they would share things when they needed to talk to somebody, and, like, they would show up when I, planned things or did things like that because of all of that. And I think that's what these 10 Commandments do, that they're given on this mountaintop experience, but they're meant to be taken down and to help us live in a solid relationship with one another, and care for one another in a different capacity, where we're not going to hear the voice of God like Moses did every day, but to have this gift and how that continues to call us to live in serving each other, and serving God first and foremost. And same thing with the Transfiguration. We can't build tents. We have to go down. But because you have witnessed that I am the Son of God, now you truly can believe who I say I am, so that when we go down in this mountain, we can share that with others. We can live in what the Son of God means, and you can listen to me.
Yeah. You wrap that up real nice and tight with a nice bow there, I think.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
I appreciate your time, Sarah. Again, if you're watching this or listening to it, subscribe. Every little bit helps, and maybe we'll start working on those mugs.
Yeah, getting Trust the Story podcast mugs.
Yes.
Become more official to go with our plant.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.